We definitely have. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to call the meeting today to order. This is the regular scheduled board meeting of the Kirkland Meadows Public Utility District on Friday, February 6th, 2026 at 2 p.m. We'll move on to item two on our agenda, roll call.
Rotunda,
Here.
Epstein,
Here.
Schroeder,
Here.
Cooper,
Here.
Warrenberg here.
Announcements.
I'm pleased to announce everybody to the board meeting. If you have questions or comments and you're in attendance here today, we respectfully ask you to go to the podium, let us know your name and make your comments. If you're attending online today, there is a raise your hand feature with this webinar. Please raise your hand and we'll try to get to you as soon as we can. And that concludes my announcements.
I'll note that we're all in person, so votes will be done during voice votes. Start roll call today. Agenda item 4, corrections to the agenda of the consent calendar. I'd like to pull out the board minutes so that we can talk about that specifically. Good. Anyone else? Okay, let's move on to item 5, comments from the audience. Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Jay Dwyer. I am a homeowner invested in Kirkwood. I live here full-time year-round. I'm also a small business owner in Kirkwood. I'm here all the time. I wanted to let the board know that I've heard Joe Forrest has been made the head of snow removal. And I just want to say I think he's a great choice. I worked for him under Dave Waddle as a snow removal operator. And I just hope the board can give him all the space and grace that he needs to move forward in that position. And I think he'll do a really good job doing snow removal. But I did want to bring to the board's attention the optics of the past head of snow removal going into the winter, actively looking for a new job, and then quitting on us right before the beginning of snow removal season. That just doesn't seem right to me. Why would the head of snow removal be looking to leave? Our last general manager left us right before the beginning of the winter. Like, what can the board, what can the community do to ask those questions? Why are these people leaving? Right? The head of snow removal should not be leaving in December. That shouldn't happen. Also, optics wise, I received a couple of emails stating that the billing was done incorrectly for the electrical and then most recently the propane. That is up to the district manager and to you guys to make sure that that stuff is correct before it gets sent out. Because frankly, you should be embarrassed, right? Like, you raise the rates, then you forget to actually raise the rates. Like, if you're talking about optics, a new logo is not what you need. Not having to send out correction emails is where you should actually get started with those optics. I support the district and whatever it takes to make this community work. And I will gladly give you my opinion if you have any questions on my thoughts, but we really need to be focusing on why are people leaving. You find somebody that loves Kirkwood, that wants to be here, that wants to be on this mountain, they're never going to leave. I've known Joe for 20 years, right? Why is he a good choice for snow removal? Because he loves this place. He wants to be here. He wants to live here. Find people like that, and the rest of it's easy. Thanks.
Thanks, Jay. I want to take a couple of seconds to respond. I'm allowed to respond a little bit, and so I want a couple of things. So thank you for your support, Joe. I appreciate that. I know staff have been working really hard to do the transition. As you said, I don't think anyone wanted to see what happened with our head of snow removal leave right before the season started. That wasn't ideal, but we're really excited with what we do have in staff there. You asked kind of two things: why are people leaving? and the specifics of this one person. I mean, certainly for HR and whatever, I don't want to get into his specifics, but I do think that there's a good question of understanding and evaluating our retention, what's happening here at the district and why are people transitioning, and something that, in personnel, we ask that same question. And I think it's a good one that we'll keep asking. I appreciate that. And then the billing, I can't agree more with you. I am embarrassed. I am very disappointed in how we've executed in the last 2 months. And I will say I've appreciated that our general manager has taken feedback on this. And if you, I don't know if you saw, but in the general manager's goals and objectives that we talked about, I think it was last meeting, this was a part of it. And the general manager will get docked because this hasn't been happening correctly. I will say that staff and general manager have been receptive to this feedback that I know I've given personally, and I'm sure other people have as well. And they've taken steps and they've made some new hires, and there are other people that are coming in, and we've been talking about this as a group. And so I appreciate what you're saying, and I do feel embarrassed. That's the word you used. I do. And we're working on it. I think we'll make improvements.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
I think it's important that if staff makes a mistake, that is all the more reason to keep them here. Right? If somebody in staff makes a mistake, then they're going to learn from that mistake and they're not going to do it again. Right? But I do think it's up to the board and management to make sure that those mistakes don't get out the door to the public beforehand. You'll always find me 100% behind the staff. Right? I want them to have better raises. I want them to have more training. I want them to have a great place to live, right? You give all those things to people, you'll get good, solid people that are going to do a good job for you. And then we won't have those embarrassing mistakes anymore.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Jay. And I will just say, in my professional experience outside the district, I always think about what have we done what can we do to enable the process, or whatever we can do to make this not happen again, because we have great people who are doing their absolute best here. And I fully believe that everyone on our staff. We are all also human and people make mistakes, but how can we build processes, training manuals, and process, other things around process to make sure that we have mitigated this as much as possible. And that's what we're working on right now. So appreciate your comments and agree that we need to get billing right. Pretty much
One of the foundations.
it's the foundation of what we're doing, a lot of it, operations and billing. So appreciate that. Thanks, Jay. I don't see any other hands up online. I don't see anyone here. So let's go ahead and go to written comments from the public. We have one written comment from the public that is from Howard Hoffman. It's related to the electric rates that we're doing. So I would say, I'm sure everyone's read it. We do have a agenda topic on this, so we can talk about it more then, and some of the ideas that brought forward here at this time. I will also say, I think a lot of the concepts here are probably going to be in a future agenda topic, not as much this one. Similarly, we have a piece of paper that we all handed because it came in later in terms of our cycle. It came in, I think, yesterday from Bruce Oldenburg. And so we have this here. There are paper copies for anyone in the room who wants it, and we'll make sure this gets into the next board packet. And I'll just say it has similar themes to what Howard had written as well as a summary.
Agreed.
Okay. Okay. Consent calendar, agenda item 7. We're going to do 7B and C since we're going to move 7A into agenda item 8. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I think you should move it into next.
I think we should. Anyone?
Whatever it is, you should move.
I move adoption of the consent calendar item B and C.
All right. Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor indicate with aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you. So agenda item 8, we'll move the board minutes. Supervisor Woodrow, I believe, was not listed as in attendance in our minutes, but she was here. So we'd like to indicate Supervisor Woodrow as being in attendance and make that adjustment.
Any other changes?
That's it.
And does that need a motion?
It does.
I move we adopt those edited, the minutes with that edit.
Great. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor indicate with aye. Any opposed? Excellent. Thank you. Let's move on to agenda item 9A. This is resolution 26-02, approving, authorizing, and directing execution of certain installment sale refinancing documents for the district's wastewater plant project. and approving related documents and official actions.
As the board is aware, and maybe some who did not attend the public facilities meeting, corporation meeting we just had. We're in the process of closing our wastewater treatment plant loan, and part of that process is for the Public Facilities Corporation, as well as the board, to pass some resolutions to continue with the closure of the loan. So before you today are two resolutions along with this related documents, the KMGD trust agreement, as well as install sale agreement. But first, we'd like to have you pass resolution 2602, approving and authorizing and directing execution of certain installment sale refinancing documents for the district's wastewater plant project and approving related documents and official actions. This was prepared by Jones Hall and reviewed by District Council.
Any questions from the public on this? Board conversation on it?
Well, can I just suggest for the benefit of people that we ask John to explain again? Just the summary of-
Bob.
Well, I thought you had a really good explanation and
What was that explanation?
Yeah.
Let me bring up notes from years ago.
While he's doing that, we had a meeting at 1:30 that was the other side of this. So we talked about it a little bit that.
So a few years ago, we put together financing to refurbish the wastewater treatment plant, and the financing is very attractive to the USDA Rural Utility Service, RUS. And so we were securing the commitment for that financing, but they don't fund you until the project's completed. So you have to get alternate financing to finance the construction. So at the time, Eric Christensen, Standish O'Grady, and I, we ran a process. We worked with a banker. We did a bake-off and got a construction loan from CoBank. And so that's what we've been drawing on the last few years as we do this project. Now the project's completed, so we're going through the process of paying back CoBank using the lower interest rate funding from RUS. And the RUS interest rate is 1.75%. So it's a really attractive rate, 40-year note. So it's kind of a confusing process, I would say, of how that happens with the RUS. So instead of issuing a public bond, you're doing financing through RUS, which avoids us being exposed to market volatility for a bond. So we're locked into that 1.75 for the full duration of the loan. But it does involve our Public Facilities Corporation. So you have to transfer the improved asset into the PFC, and then you pay that PFC. I think it's approximately $193,000 a year for 40 years.
Mhm.
And then you buy that improvement back through the PFC. We own the PFC as well as the PUD. So it's not as if we're giving control of anything to some outside entity. If you look at the reason why we felt like this was a good approach for financing the project is the wastewater treatment is a very steady revenue stream. So it doesn't have high number of fluctuations that might leave us unable to make that annual payment. The terms of missing some of the terms aren't very onerous. You can take remedial actions, pay out of reserves, change rates and things like that. So if there was a major drop in wastewater treatment revenue, there are ways to adapt for that. The rate is fixed. Let's see. Let me see if I have any other interesting notes. I think that kind of covers it. So
thank you, I appreciate it.
So, and then the project came in under the cap. So you'll see in the documentation about 7.4 million as being the amount allowed by the RUS for us to borrow, but the project came in around 6.8 million or something like that. So we're within that limit or below that limit. So all this paperwork is to go through the closing with the RUS and then pay off the CoBank construction loan, which comes due in May. So we think this will get through the RUS in about 60 days. That's the estimate, and that'd be in time to pay CoBank and close out that loan.
Thank you, John. Appreciate the background on that. That's really helpful. The only thing I would say is I think the first whereas reads a little bit odd to me. It says the supply, storage, and distribution of domestic wastewater. I would think that would say more like collection and storage, because I don't think we really supply or distribute wastewater. My guess is that this was probably used from electric, water, or propane, and we changed those words. So I don't know if it matters at all, but it just seems weird to me that we would say we supply wastewater.
Yeah, understood. And yeah, again, this was a document the council approved and created. But we can certainly make that change. It's not gonna cause a problem with the USD closing.
Well, in a sense, we do supply it to the leach fields to meet
Sure.
the standards that most people don't have to meet. So I don't know.
I don't know. It's just it read weird to me, but I'm just neurotic, so that's fine. I'm fine keeping it as
You
is.
okay keeping it?
I'm okay keeping it
That
as
would
is.
save a little bit of work. Okay, thanks.
All right. Is there a motion?
Can I ask what I missed the 130,
Sure,
I
go
think
ahead.
it was a 2, so what was discussed in the 130 in the quick?
Same thing. It's just with
Same thing, except we had bond counsel here, so we were able to ask some questions to bond counsel that you might stump the band on. If you get too into the legal works.
it's just they're the other half of this. They're the other party in this, right?
I see.
And so that corporation had to say that they want to do this, and now PUD has to say they want to do this. So it's the same, basically the same document. Okay, is there a motion to?
Yeah,
approve-
I move to approve a resolution 2602.
Great, is there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor indicate with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes. All right, we will move on to agenda item 9E, which is resolution 26-03, execution of certain installment sale refinancing documents for the district's wastewater plant project and approving related documents and official actions. Rick, go ahead again.
So again, this is another resolution before the board that's required to close the loan. It's actually a Russ Bolton 1780-27, and some of the board members may recall this bulletin 1780-27 was also used in some of the other loans that we closed with Russ. So it's a boilerplate document, but required to close the loan. So again, staff recommendation for the board to pass resolution 2603 as Doug described.
Any questions?
Move adoption of 2603.
Second,
Yes, I'll second that.
all in favor indicate with aye. Any opposed? Opposed, it passes. Rick, I will say that same document in 9B has all of those yellows. So it would be
Yeah,
nice to swap those out as well, just like we talked about with the other.
Yes, thank you.
All right, let's move on to agenda item 9C, audit.
Okay, and before I do that, I'm going to promote Dan Roberts with Baker Tilly to a panelist. Dan is part of our audit team that reviewed the district's finances, and so while he's being promoted, I'm going to bring up his PowerPoint.
Okay, good afternoon.
Hello.
Hi, Dan.
Hello.
Need more volume.
Yeah, can you turn it up a little bit, Rick?
I don't know if that's on my side. Oh, wait. My speaker
I can
didn't
speak
help.
up a little bit as well.
There you go.
That's better.
That's it. Thank
I
you.
think it was on our side. Thanks, Bob. All right,
Perfect.
go ahead.
Okay, well, thank you again for your time today to present our results of the 2025 audit. Next slide, please. So the audit was completed over October through November, and we finished up in January. And so the reports that were issued were the unmodified opinion on the financial statements of the district. So this unmodified opinion is what you want to receive, indicates a clear audit, that the financial statements were prepared in accordance with accounting standards and frameworks, and they are materially accurate. Other report we issued was a report on internal controls over compliance under government and auditing standards. This report did have a significant deficiency identified related to monitoring controls over the financial close and reporting process. And the third report issued was our RUS compliance letter. This is related to the borrowings of the district through RUS. This slide here just going over some items that we are required to communicate to those charged with governance, which is the board. So I want to call out that the significant accounting policies and the underlying estimates, they're all disclosed in note 1 to the financial statements. So there's no changes in the district's approach or the application of those estimates in the current year. And some of those key estimates that impact the financial statements are the allowance for doubtful accounts, depreciable lives of your capital assets, as well as the estimates that go into the valuation of the pension and the OPEB liabilities. And the last kind of one is the allocation between the funds of the district. So these are all consistent with years past. The slide here, just wanting to go over that there was a handful of corrected misstatements recorded as a result of our audit, excuse me. Those have all been reflected in the financial statements that you have in front of you. And those are as a result of the kind of delays in the financial close and reporting process. The slide in the next outlines some of the journal entries that were considered
Get a copy of it.
immaterial to the financial statements. These were not recorded by management. They were determined to be immaterial individually and in entirety to the financial statements. So these have not been recorded or presented in the financial statements.
Is that what you mean with the word passed? In other words,
Yes, passed. As they were, these are immaterial errors that were identified, but they were not at a material threshold that would require them to be recorded in the financial statements.
says they're material past misstatements, so I assume they're material. Got it.
Okay, next slide, please.
I'm sorry, and you want the next one after this?
Yes, one more,
Okay.
please.
Okay, sorry.
Perfect.
Did you pass over S? Yeah, S Beta is, that, can you explain that? That's what,
Yeah,
like
so-
7 years worth of software licenses or something?
Yeah, that's related to your automatic meter reader license. And so at the time of adoption, that wasn't determined to be material by the district. And so that's gonna hang out there as a past adjustment until that contract concludes.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. The slide here, just wanting to communicate that we are not aware that management consulted with any other accountants during our audit. Also, any potential risks and exposures, those are disclosed in note 8 to the financial statements. Nothing outside of the ordinary was disclosed or came to our attention. And then finally, there was no disagreements with management during our audit procedures. So the one significant deficiency that was identified and reported was over the financial close and reporting process. So during the financial close, there was a handful of sizable journal entries that were identified by our procedures that were then recorded by management in the financial statements. Some of these entries were also related to allocation between the various funds. And the last kind of item impacting the significant deficiency was the timeliness of receiving information during our audit procedures. Lastly, just want to go over some of the upcoming new standards that will be adopted by the district in the coming years. The first two all relate to disclosures, so there won't be a huge impact or undertaking by the district to recalculate numbers, where some of the more recent adopted GASBs have required numbers to change. These are just going to be disclosure related, so not a huge lift by district personnel.
Yeah.
And with that, just open it up for any questions or comments from the board.
John, did you have anything that you wanted to add from a finance perspective?
Yeah, I think we would like the audit to have been done faster, so we're gonna do things to try to get that done more in the November timeframe next year. I would note that the audit does state that the financial statements accurately represent our financial performance, so that's the primary thing you're looking for, is the reports we're looking at and make decisions off of are actually representative of what we're actually doing with our finances. With regard to the significant weakness, we're gonna do some things next year to add some additional accounting resource. It'll give us a little more check and balance. But Dan, you might comment on that significant weakness as far as how it relates to businesses the size of CAMPUD.
Yeah, so the significant deficiency was all related around the financial close and reporting. And the impacts this year were just kind of the timeliness of when we received information and then having that information being correct when we receive it. I don't know, we're not looking back to years prior, but there was a lot of improvement this year in the accounting department on receiving information and the timeliness. And so there's only a handful of entries or areas of focus I think the district could look at next year, which we've discussed with management. I think we're on a good path to hopefully have that significant deficiency be eliminated in fiscal year 26.
All right, thanks. That's all I have.
And then I'll just comment, like, there was no indication of fraud or anything that, indicative of any issues in terms of how we are doing it at a higher level. Is that correct?
Correct.
I'd say most of the journal entry problems tend to be expenses or income reported in the wrong period. And that can be tightened up if we do a little bit more internal review of journal entries and things like that. It's not an accounting problem. You need a business knowledge of saying, oh, when did that expense actually happen versus when it was billed? So it's not it's a diligence item, but it's not like a fraud item. It's not like money's disappearing.
That's right. Okay. Thanks for the presentation. Let's open up public comments or questions. I don't see any hands up or anyone in the room. Okay. Board discussion or questions? Anything? Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll need a motion to accept the audit.
Yeah, motion to accept the audit.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second. All in favor indicate with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Before we move on, I just want to say thanks to John and the finance committee and staff and Terry and Rick. Chris is also on the finance committee, and then we've got John, Jack, Frank, and Standish on finance. They've put a lot of work into this. We had an audit subcommittee of that committee also working on this. And I just want to say thank you. I know, and Terry, all the work that you had to do and your staff to get this out. So we are going to continually make improvements. I know on personnel, you'll see it in the report. We've talked about this too, about some of the things John alluded to. So we're going in the right direction here. We're still not perfect and probably never will be, but I think we're moving in the right direction. And so thank you to our auditors here and everyone for making this progress.
It's the only other question I have. The auditors changed their names. Does that have any impact on us or?
No impact to you all.
Yeah, we have to write a check to a different
All right.
entity.
Okay.
Dan, thank you much for all your work on this, and thanks to Olga as well. Pass that
Yes.
along.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. Okay. All right, well, with that, we'll move on to agenda item 9D, finances. Terry.
Budget overview.
All right. So we're looking at November financials. So we're looking at the overview and budget variances. As you can see, we've expanded on our overview on the explanations of the financials. So looking at the balance sheet. Oh, for one, are there any questions on the overview before we move forward? Okay. Yeah, go down to the balance sheet. Okay. So on our balance sheet, the total operating cash is above budget due to the timing of collections. And then the total capital reserve cash was below budget by $471,692. That was also due to the September quarterly rest payment. Are there any other questions on the balance sheet?
Look like it.
Go down to combined income statement.
Yes, you might explain, the impacts why operating revenues and total operating are off by, significant amount. And a lot of that's the impact of budgeting, snow removal as a lump sum instead of accruing it over the 7 months of the contract,
Correct.
right?
Right.
So how much does that close the gap on?
So because when you're looking at the combined income statement under other, so like John mentioned, the budget number is just showing the first installment versus allocating across the 7 months. So that's why you're seeing the variance here. Next year's budget will actually be allocating.
It'll accrue it over the duration of the contract. Yeah.
So you won't be seeing the.
Yeah, and that was kind of a tough one because it creates this variance that we all have to scratch our heads over every month. On the other hand, we want to accrue it properly, and I'm always against changing budget numbers. Yeah, once the budget's approved, I think the budget has to stay in the system the way it is. Otherwise, I think it loses its validity. So unfortunately, we got to remember this every month of why is this causing this shortfall.
And that will remain on the overview throughout.
Right.
The rest of the months we have. Any other questions on the income statement or the individual income statements? And go down to preliminaries. Any questions on the December preliminaries or the cash flow? Actually, we're not doing a cash flow.
Preliminary looks like we're catching up.
Yes.
And cash flow, we need to
We're working.
fix that report. So the deficiency in the report is it doesn't. You look at you probably can't read it, but if you look at the fifth line down, it says capital expense and it didn't enter in the capital expense numbers. So there's a significant amount of money in cash outflows that aren't recorded here. So I think when are we going to get
We should have a draft by next finance. That's.
Okay.
Any other questions?
from me? Anybody else?
I don't see any hands up. Also in here. Any other board questions, comments? Okay. Thanks, Terry.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you.
Let's move on to agenda item 9E. This is the electric rate study update. Rick, you're listed on the agenda here.
Yeah, and this is gonna be a combined effort, but Operations Manager Brandon Benson's actually gonna present this portion of the board. I'm gonna leave the panelists, or I'm sorry, the attendees off so we can see the screen a little bit better. But I know Doug, you can see if someone raises their hand. I'm
Yep.
happy to move it back when you want me to.
I'll let you know.
Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone.
Do you wanna try the slides or are you okay? I mean, just let me know when you want to.
Okay, we'll do. So we are going to do an electric rate study status update. And what we're going to present today is an update on where we started, where we are so far. We're going to present a draft financial model for the upcoming rate study, for the first year of the rate study. And we're going to seek board and community feedback on our model assumptions. Now, to this point, we have heard feedback on the current rate structure. We hear you. As an objective, our temporary advisory committee has the plan to develop a rate structure for the residential customers where the base rate is not tied to usage. But we're not going to talk about that today because we have to build the assumptions and the financial model to know what we are allocating. So this meeting, that's what we're focused on. And we have several slides here. If we can, unless it's an emergency, if we can hold questions till the end, I'll try to get through this relatively quickly. All right. So who's working on this? I am working on this along with Rick and Terry from our staff. We have a temporary advisory committee for the electric rate study, which Chris and Bob are on. We have brought online a rate consultant, New Gen Strategies and Solutions. They have been retained to review our cost of service design and our rate study. And this includes the option for the consultant to be at our public hearing. The cost for this consultant is a not to exceed contract price of $20,000. Next slide. We're in February already. So today we are looking at the draft expense and revenue model. And this model uses the audited financials that we just saw, updated with our initial projections for fiscal year ending in 27. The goal for that is to understand how much revenue we need to collect so that we can provide electric service to the community. In March, we expect to present options for the rate structure itself. How do we allocate these expenses over the customer base? We expect to prep for the public hearing and for individualized customer letters that can be sent out after the March meeting that will tell each customer what the impacts of the proposed rate structure changes are. And then in April, we'll do a public hearing. So we'll have a public hearing either at or a special meeting to give customers an update, but to also get feedback from the customers who've now seen what the expected impacts to them are. Then May and June would be May incorporating that feedback, taking a final look at our budget data for the upcoming year, making any adjustments that are needed, and shooting for approval of this rate study in June so that it can take effect in July. And we understand from the public comment, the written comment that Howard gave, and other comments we've received, we understand there's some concerns about the timeline. We've been working on this since November. We feel it's realistic at this point. If something comes up and there are roadblocks, we will let the community and the board know right away. But we feel it's realistic. And it's important to note that of the people who are very unhappy with the current rate structure, there are a not insignificant amount of increases that are set to go into effect in July. So it's in our best interest if we agree with this and want to make a change that we do it before July so that we can minimize the impact to customers. Next, please. All right, here's the numbers. So if we look at the table on the left, we've got total revenue in electric from billing, both in a dollar amount and a percentage. What you see in other, that's penalties and late charges. In the percentage category, you see that 67.7% of our rates have been collected in base rates. If you remember back to the 2021 rate study, which you probably don't, we were shooting for 85%. So the reason that that number is not 85% is we had higher than expected sales of kilowatt hours, and the margin per kilowatt hour changes this percentage for us. Over on the right, you can see kilowatt hour sales per year. So over the last 5 years, we've averaged 7.1 million kilowatt hours. You can see a very obvious uptick during COVID, but a generally slightly trending upward average. And so we looked at these numbers and came up with these 5 recommendations. The first recommendation is a target budget for our purposes of 6.8 million kilowatt hours. This is the same as we used in 2021. And if we think back to that last slide, we hit that 3 out of the 5 years. So it's not unrealistic that we will hit that, but we don't want to assume we'll hit 7.1 every year going forward. We want to remain conservative here. The second assumption here is that no property tax will be allocated at this 6.8 million kilowatt hour sales number. Because of our RUS covenants, because of the requirements of the loan that we took out for the Out Valley project, we're required to retain $200,000 in property taxes in case we need it, in case our sales are very low and we can't meet our loan requirements, in case we have higher expenses for some unexpected reason. But our assumption here is that to start with, we will not allocate any property taxes. And instead, third bullet point here is we will plan to cover the loan margin within the usage rate. So we will build ourselves enough room in our usage rate, the per kilowatt hour charge, to cover these RUS targets. The fourth one here, we plan to keep the same allocation expenses to meter, base, and usage rates. And what that means is that a certain percentage of our expenses, and which expenses, will be covered by the base rate on your bill, the usage rate on your bill, and the meter charges on your bill. We're going to assume that we keep the same ones that we had in 2021. And then the last bullet point is consider adding 2 megawatts of capacity to the powerhouse. And this deals with the potential removal of the Volvo generators and replacement with a 2 megawatt generator. This is not something that has been decided. It is not currently included in our capital plan or our electric master plan, but the committee felt that this was important to bring to the board and the community's attention as a potential thing that we should look at within our planning period, to discuss redundancy in case of a outage on the Out Valley line during periods of high use or higher growth. All right. So here are our expenses, the audited expenses from fiscal 24-25 for the electric department, and our estimate for fiscal year ending 27. You will look at these and you'll note that they are very close and often exactly the same. Difference is in salaries and wages and the housing and wellness benefits. Salaries and wages is due to a vacant position that was vacant in 24-25, which has been filled. Housing and wellness benefits, these are due to filling this position, but also filling this position with an operator who lives in the valley. So the housing benefit does increase over the next year. The other thing that we discussed at our committee level was the amortization line item here. Just for everyone's benefit here, these are the non-tangible assets related to mostly 82% of this number is the Out Valley line and PG&E cost of ownership, the amount that we had to pay PG&E to take ownership of a portion of the line. And the rest is the non-tangible assets regarding the Mountain Utilities purchase.
So the 82% of that is very tangible and 18 is intangible. Is that correct?
Even
No.
the 82% related to Out Valley is the intangible part of that project, the PG&E purchase part.
And yet it's not goodwill. It's not overpayment compared to book value or anything like that. I mean, it's part of our investment at the time. And so by my reading, it's like depreciation of a CapEx. But we can leave it.
Okay. Note here, depreciation, interest, and amortization. As we get through the budget process that we are currently doing, these will be recalculated. We expect to see some slight differences. However, we expect them to be slight. So this slide here shows the expense allocation, the percentages between meter base rate and usage rate that we had talked about earlier. The first column here are the expenses, our estimated fiscal year ending 27 expenses, and then they are spread out based on these percentages here, which are the same from 2021, into our meter base rate and usage rate, the three components of our electric bill. You see here that cost of goods sold, which is power that we purchase off the grid, diesel if we generate electricity, our O&M, our contract services, and also our 5% RUS margin are all covered 100% in the usage rate. That is because they're directly related to how much power we sell. And then if you look at the very bottom line here, you see our target percentages. Meter, we're targeting, 0.8%. Base rate, we're back to 85. We're shooting for 85.2% there. And that is because so much of our cost here are high fixed value cost related to the Out Valley construction. And then lastly, our usage rate is 14%. So usage rate components. This is what makes up the per kilowatt hour charge. We are continuing to target 6.8 million kilowatt hours sold. If you look here next to the last line here, you've got our RUS margin. So this is the amount of money we need to collect at 6.8 million kilowatt hours to cover our RUS loan covenants, 4 cents a kilowatt hour. We're also required by Section 385 of the California Public Utility Code to collect 0.37 cents per kilowatt hour as a public benefits charge. This rate study will look at 2 scenarios, which is adding that 0.37 cents to the usage rate or reducing our margin by this amount to cover this. But we are required to do that. We feel very strongly that it's prudent to have some margin. We can't run this with no margin because unexpected cost increases can be absorbed in our margin without property tax allocations or without having to call an emergency board meeting where we immediately raise our rates. So we need to maintain a margin. Above 6.8 million kilowatt hours, our base target, our margin goes from 4 cents to 10 cents. And at these numbers, above 6.8 million kilowatt hours, we can pay off debt faster, we can build reserves if we need to. And the last thing I'll note on this slide is that the usage rate we have here in the last line, 23 cents per kilowatt hour, is a 1 cent drop per kilowatt hour from where we are now, which is 24 cents. Meter and base rates. So taking a look at the last line here, you'll see the EDUs for fiscal year ending 25 were 2617.4. For the purposes of this study, we are maintaining that number, that same number of EDUs, because we need a way to allocate the base cost. Now, depending on the rate structure that we discuss and choose at the next board meeting, it may be more appropriate to rename this the base rate allocation rather than an equivalent dwelling unit, which implies a per unit charge, but that's to be determined. And then the other note I have here on this slide is our $4.15 million amount is 85% of our total expenses. So this is what we're targeting for base rate. And now we're going to look at the 2 years side by side. So we got a comparison for you. Fiscal year ending 25. We see here the last 3 lines are what you probably are really interested in. Kilowatt hours, 24 cents. Our EDUs do not change year to year. Our EDU price per unit in fiscal year ending 25 was $121.39. In fiscal year ending 27, which is the one we are looking at now, we have a kilowatt hour charge per kilowatt hour charge of 23 cents. EDUs are the same, and EDU charge of 132.17. So the increase in the EDU amount is due to 2 things. And one of those things is an approximately $200,000 increase in cost expenses. The other piece of that is eliminating a property tax allocation. So since that increase is something that we want to make sure we analyze carefully, the advisory committee is going to analyze, much like the board did with water, 3 different steps: a $0 property allocation, $100,000 property allocation, and a $200,000 property tax allocation, to see the impacts to this 132.17. Those numbers we will have for the next board meeting. And then again, the extra margin that we will generate above 6.8 million kilowatt hours of sales, even at a 23 cent rate, can be used to pay down debt or fund reserves. My last slide. All right, next steps. So cost of sales. We are waiting on a new contract from Shell about purchase power. What we have right now and what the board instituted soon after the adoption of the last rate study was a hedge, a pre-purchase of a fixed amount of power at a known cost. We have initial indications from Shell that we may actually be able to do a hedge for the next rate study at a lower cost than what we're seeing right now. We hope to get that finalized and back before the board. The board may choose to enter into a new contract sooner than July, if the pricing is favorable, because typically wintertime prices are lower. It may behoove us to lock in that portion of our next 5 years of electric rates. But we will bring that back. We also have the need to discuss required RECs and how that impacts our budget. So at the last rate study, the board decided to go to 100% renewable in the form of offsetting 100% of our sales with renewable energy credits. That is not required by the state. However, we are required to meet these percentages shown and the 2031% that we don't know yet. We have currently enough rec contracts at a relatively low rate to meet all of these requirements through the duration of our rate study. We have indications that upcoming purchases for recs, at least at this point, are going to be higher than what we're paying right now. So we will need to decide if we want to continue going with 100% renewable. And if we do, will we want to put a price cap on that, a cents per kilowatt hour that will be required to meet 100%, or possibly other revenue sources for this? We'd like to note that the budget estimates that we're working on right now, they could affect these expense estimates. Like we said earlier, certainly things like interest expense will change slightly. Next up, and the one that I think everybody is really excited about, we are going to present some options for allocating the base rate revenue to customers in the March and April meetings. And we are committed to finding options that eliminate the dependence on a usage component. And then the last thing we have here is everything we've shown here today is for the next fiscal year, the one ending in 27. We will then need to work on the expense assumptions for years 2 through 5 of our rate study. We did very well with our 2021 rate study in our total amount of revenue that we expected, but we weren't as good as we could have been. We aren't clairvoyant. We didn't see COVID coming. Our expenses rose faster than we anticipated. So even though we won't be perfect for this next 5-year period either, we do want to make sure that we look at that and come up with reasonable assumptions so that we can be in as good of shape as we are right now, 5 years from now.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Questions?
yes,
There.
so no, thank you, Randy, very much. Before we get to public comment, just Bob and Chris, anything that you wanted to add from the temporary advisory committee overview perspective, and then we'll go to public hands. I see we had one hand up, and then we'll go to board discussion. Do you have anything that you want to add?
Oh, I think it's been going well. Everyone's, Bob has done a tremendous amount himself, and but staff has taken the lead, and we've got a good input from community members. So, as Brandy said, a lot of the things that the letter writers are most keen to hear about, that'll come next month in the March meeting.
I don't see any hands in the room. Oh, well, I have 2 hands in the room now, but I saw these 2 hands first. So we'll do online first, and then we'll come back to the hands in the room.
Trevor first.
Hey there, thanks, Rick. Thanks all for the hard work on this, and super glad to hear that folks are committed to moving away from a usage-based base rate, and excited to hear more about that next month. I also think budgeting for a smaller usage than we've observed makes a lot of sense to me. Just a couple of questions on the allocation. Why is all of the O&M going into the usage rate? It seems to me like probably a bunch of the operations and maintenance is pretty independent from how much power is actually used. Shouldn't some of that go into the fixed rate as well? And I guess you don't have to answer it, but we'll leave that rhetorical.
Well, hold on, but we can't answer, Trevor, we can answer questions. So
Yeah,
like,
sure.
do you have other questions? So maybe outline your questions and then we'll answer them.
So that's one question. The second question about the RACs, renewable energy credits. I mean, personally, I'm in favor of going 100% renewable, but it would be nice if propane were on equal footing and similarly offset as electricity, so that there's not a sort of weird incentive to pick the more polluting option for energy, because it's cheaper because it's not being offset. And so my second question is, has there been any discussion around trying to bring these on an equal footing? I know the propane rate study already happened, so it's not going to be easy, but can we write some conditional language or something like that to try to, at least in the future, say our goal is to move these onto equal footing? Third question, on slide 4 versus slide 7, I feel like this 85% of the fixed costs are covered by the base rate is different than saying this much of our revenue was collected from the base rate. So that didn't seem like a fair comparison to me. It's a minor technical point, but if you look at the percent of the revenue collected from the base rate under the new budget, it's not 85%. I think it's more like 72. So we should either compare how much of the base rate is covered or cover how much of the fixed expense is covered by the base rate now, or how much of the overall revenue comes from the base rate, but not an apples to oranges comparison. Again, slide 4 and slide 7 there. And then I think my last question is sort of irrelevant, but I don't understand why the EDUs are showing up here if we're committed to moving away from a usage-based rate. I presume that's just for historical context, but I hope that the word EDU goes away, or at least changes its present meaning dramatically next month. So those are my 4 questions. And then I just wanted to mention also, I think Bob and Chris saw this, but I put together a little browser-based tool that interacts with some anonymized data about current usage and current rate structures, and lets you twiddle future budget numbers and a bunch of different rate scenarios and look at how much revenue would be collected and fixed versus usage costs under different rate models, and how each customer's rate would change on an absolute and fractional basis over the next 5 years. And so if anybody else is interested, especially on the board, or Brandy and Rick, I'm happy to give you a copy of this tool for you to poke around at, but I found it helpful in my thinking through sort of what the implications are of different allocation strategies, especially on how much current customers would see their rates change.
Thanks for the questions and thanks for the work on this, Trevor. Appreciate you doing that. That's interesting. I'm curious about it, and we'll go from there. Those answer your questions. Brandy, you want to go through them? Do you have them all written down?
Sure, I have them written down.
Okay.
I believe that mostly 1 and 4 are what we're going to have answers for here. As far as the percent allocation for O&M, I agree that we potentially do have additional operations and maintenance costs that are there, whether or not we sell 6.8 or 7.1 million kilowatt hours. However, for simplicity and the ability to look at rate study to rate study, we've chosen here just to retain the same percent allocations. I made a note about the REC propane issue and whether or not there is something we could do. Like you said, we did just finish the propane rate study. So I don't know that there is anything that we could do on the propane rate during an electric rate study.
Yeah, propane rates are not part of this conversation. I would just say that we did go through a period of time where we offered a voluntary program to buy offsets, and it was pretty poorly received. So our experiment with making it voluntary, I would say, was mixed. And I'd also emphasize that there's no such thing as a renewable propane credit. So they are different concepts comparing offsets to, so it is a complicated, there is no one-to-one, but we could certainly, in a different setting, consider having some form of propane offset.
Yeah, I think my comment there is just, I prefer them not to be on unequal footing. If we're trying to offset the CO2 emissions related to generating electricity or avoiding buying electricity from people who are, it would be nice to similarly have some costs associated with that analogous effect from propane.
Understood. Agreed.
The next question was the base revenue versus expenses allocation and how it's presented on slide 4 versus 7, and I'll make a note of that and take a look for the next meeting. And then lastly, the EDU's question.
Can I
yes.
would like to comment on that. So the 2021 rate study only assumed that the base rate allocation could change by CPI, and only the components of, and so the majority of the base rate is in our debt service. So that said, if salaries go up faster than the CPI, there is no way to recover it. So one of the reasons that's low is the fact that I think that was a flaw in the study, that we could not change the base rate to match the higher costs of salary. And that's something I would think we'd want to correct this time. Otherwise, that number would have been higher. The other thing to just point out is the 2021 rate study assumed about 180,000 in property taxes each year to be drawn. And that's the open question, whether we want to continue that or not.
Do you have more?
One more.
Yep.
And that was the EDU question.
Yep.
And at this point, we are retaining the number and EDU designation so that we have something comparable to allocate. But understood, I understand that the nomenclature there is confusing if we move away from a usage-based system. And so we will have options for this next time.
Amazing. Thank you all.
Great.
Thanks, Trevor.
I'm going to come back to Trevor's first question though, because I think the O&M, and I say I appreciate your answer, and that having an apples to apples comparison of what we did 5 years ago to today is a good one. But I will also say that just because we did it 5 years ago this way is not a great reason to do it again. So if there are justifications to change that, and I think that could make sense to potentially lower a kilowatt hour rate, I think that's something we should investigate. And I will second say, you've mentioned that we've retained a consultant that does these sorts of things. And I would say this is a good example of a question to ask the consultant to say, are these allocations appropriate given what they experience and things like that, and leverage this experience that we're paying for to get a more clarity. And, we did not have that 5 years ago. So let's leverage that now.
Excellent point, and certainly something that we should discuss with the consultant. I agree.
Thank you. All right. Excellent. Thanks for the questions, Trevor. And thanks again for the work that you've done to help support the conversation. I see another hand up here from Helen Wilson.
Hi, I'm Helen Wilson, Lot 82. First, I really appreciate the questions and comments from Trevor, who I know actually has a lot of expertise and knowledge in this space. And I'm hopeful maybe he'll join your committee and can continue asking the kinds of questions that I certainly don't know enough about to even begin to be able to ask. As a consumer, I guess the main thing that I struggle with and that I've heard from other residents is not so much that the base rate is tied to usage, but that it gets locked in after that initial 3-year period, and there's no kind of no easy way, no sort of standard easy way without fees and processes and so forth to be able to like alter or reevaluate the base rate, or in any sort of meaningful way to be able to reduce costs. And of course, after that initial period, lots of things can change in terms of household composition, use of residents for, rentals or, and so forth. So I guess that's more, that's sort of what I feel concerned about is there being no incentive to, or no ability to reduce costs or conserve or reduce energy usage. And I hope that's will be figured into the new plans as well. And I mean, obviously my bottom line biggest concern is that we figure out ways to reduce costs.
Appreciate those comments. I mean, I'll just say on the incentive to reduce, there's always the incentive to reduce from a kilowatt hour consumption perspective. Like that is always an avoided cost that everyone will always have. The proportion, the costs and allocations is what we're talking about, though. Certainly when it was 67 cents a kilowatt hour, there was a high incentive to have that. At a lower price, you could argue that that is different. However, we're also here to make sure that our costs that we charge the price that we charge align with the costs that we face. And so that is something that's also important to keep in mind as well, in terms of that trade-off of an artificially high price that does not align with our actual costs, I think is a different way of looking at it that I think we will have to consider as a board, but that's just something to keep in mind in terms of your comment. Anything else?
Is it board discussion then?
No, because we had hands here, but Helen, does that make sense, Helen?
I think so.
I think she asked a different question.
What do you think the question she asked?
So
I think,
Can I just
I think
comment?
that seems like that's answering the last part about sort of the bottom line of reducing costs. And of course, of course you have to be able to cover the cost of energy. There's, a large, I think largest proportion of cost is directly related to usage and energy consumption. So it would be good for all of us to reduce energy consumption. Or at least some forms, like we know we all want to reduce use of propane and convert to electricity and so forth.
I think that we would agree that the incentive, we are trying to move off of propane. Yes. Do you have anything else to add, Bob?
No.
Okay. Hands in the room. Go ahead.
It's a really good presentation, Brandy. I thought the most interesting part was the COVID spike, right? Like there was a clear deviation from the norm when there was more people here in the valley during COVID. And I would like to ask the board, not just with this electrical rate study, but with any future thoughts about raising rates, whether it's propane, water, wastewater, or electrical, to come at it from a revenue generating perspective, right? Like the first question you should ask yourself is, what can we do as a community to get more people to be here and to utilize the services, right? Because to me, it sounds like what you're doing is you're saying we're going to take the status quo of the way things operate now, and we're going to try to manipulate how those charges go out to the status quo. But if you ask yourself, what can we do to build this community to get more meters to turn more, to bring in more revenue, could the PUD help incentivize a school? Is there any way that we can do some kind of middle class rate help, right? Like incentivize more people to be in Kirkwood, just like during that COVID spike, and get those meters to turn more. I think it would be extremely beneficial to the entire community just to get more people here to be part of the community, to participate, to turn the light switches on, to flush the toilets. We get those meters turning and more money gets put into the pot to solve some of these problems. So if you go at that from the beginning, the very first thought, what can we do to grow the community? I think that'll be very helpful.
I appreciate that, Jay.
Thank you.
I agree. And I think, a lot of what we're trying to balance is, how to make this the most cost-effective utility that we can, and trading off the fixed cost versus the variable costs and all this stuff, and property taxes, and how do we pay off debt to help reduce that in the near term versus the long term. I mean, those are very important questions. Appreciate the comment. Any other questions, hands? Do you still have a hand? Go ahead, sir. Please come up to the podium because this is the microphones here that allow people to hear you better.
Mark, by the way.
Jay.
I thought Jay had some excellent points.
Thank you.
I noted down, so I'm here to learn, and I wanted to just ask, I have some basic questions. I think this is exactly the point is, you know,
Sorry,
appears to be-
can we hear who's talking right now?
yes, Mark Musgrave.
Great, thanks.
The kind of the point of the kind of the high cost, perceived high costs, you know, that does not encourage people to live in the valley. And you know, to your point, I think where you said, let's offer a renewable option, and the voluntary take up on that was low. I mean, that's due in large part to the fact that the overall costs are high to start with. People are unlikely to invest in voluntary additional costs if they don't want, you know, we need to encourage that. So my couple of questions I had. One, the Shell deal that you mentioned, I'd like to understand what's the basics of that. You know, it's interesting as a petrol company that, you know, we should be talking to them about electricity. So I'd like to just, you know, for the community, understand what exactly is going on there. Secondly, PG&E, you talked about a deal to pass part of the transmission line, I guess, back to them. What's that? How much of that is it? Where is it going? You know, what's our mix of you know, renewable? Is it coming from Salt Springs largely, or is it just coming from the grid? Just to understand that. And then you talked about the powerhouse, and that strikes me as an interesting and curious conundrum because that's an anachronism. You know, it stays there. To my mind, it doesn't serve much of purpose. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. Like when the power went out through the grounding issue, you know, last whenever it was March, you know, the powerhouse kicked in, but it largely didn't solve any problem because then the whole system ground to a halt anyway. So what is the point of the powerhouse now? Like, you know, do we need it? Have we considered other options there, you know, rather than just increasing the nameplate? It's like, it feels like a minor data center backup plant without the data center sitting next to it. It's like, what's it there to do? And is there a better solution? You know, have we considered taking that out, recommissioning it, looking at battery storage as a perhaps way of providing a buffer? You know, are we building for a week of grid outage? You know, the whole thing gets cut and we have to survive for months. Is that what the powerhouse is there for? Or is it to survive for 12 hours while we get, you know, stuff fixed and we get engineers back in the valley to do it? What's the point of it? Why would we invest in diesel generators when we could invest in a heated solar solution that might be very helpful in the summer and reduce the amount of money we need to give to PG&E or whoever it is, or Shell, you know, over that period? So have we considered that? I agree that we should be moving to renewables. We should be looking at, you know, embracing that because that's, you know, a sensible thing to do. So that was part of it. And then the other piece I would like to ask is, what are we doing to encourage EV charging in the valley? We can't leave that all to Vail, you know, and you know, they're doing a good job, but as everyone can see, those EV chargers now are at absolute max capacity. It's hard to get on them at the best. You know, there's been discussion. I know Greg and the team at Vail had discussed with Tesla putting a big supercharger kind of or a level 2 charger installation in the valley. What are we doing to encourage that? What are we doing to encourage that in individual HOAs to comply with the requirement that many HOAs would have to provide EV charging? You know, that's a, you know, something that we should look at and have a kind of a plan for. So a lot of questions, and you can take them in whichever order you want. Thank you.
Run with those?
Would you like to run with those?
Okay.
Fantastic.
So understood the question about the Shell deal. So Shell Energy North America not only is a petroleum company, they provide a number of energy resources. We use them as the public utility district to be our schedule coordinator for the ISO grid. That is a full-time, round-the-clock, multi-person job, that we can't handle in-house. So we submit our load forecast to them. They purchase that off the grid for us and pass it through to us. They also broker deals for firm power purchases. So what we have done in the past and what we are currently under is a hedging deal with them. And hedging simply means that rather than buy every kilowatt hour off of the grid at whatever price happens to be for that minute, we purchase some power through Shell as the broker at a fixed rate over a longer term. So that's what we're talking about here. And those prices, depending on what time of year, what the world is doing at the time, they fluctuate. And so when I mentioned it may be advantageous to make a purchase, to get into a contract sooner, we're just seeing prices that we have seen lower than we're currently under. So that might be advantageous to us.
Can I chime in just, well, to add on to everything Brandy said, but the district had looked at whether the day ahead market that we were purchasing on before or having a hedge was the right choice back 10 years ago. And they made the choice, they did the math. That was more effective for us to buy on the day ahead market. That proved to not be true 2 years ago. Was it now?
Yeah, it was 2 years.
2 years ago, where the prices did fluctuate so wildly that we were losing money for every kilowatt hour we sold in the district. Therefore, the board emergency, in the kind of emergency act, asked the staff to look into the hedging option. And so, maybe this won't be true again in the future. We can go back, but that's the concept that we're talking about here.
Do they provide, is there a percentage of renewables that Shell deal provides, or is it just a
It
bunch
is
of
not.
electrons?
It is not. So I think renewables, I can do that one at the same time.
I just want to clarify, the fact that it's called Shell shouldn't be confusing. It's an energy purchasing organization. It happens to be a subsidiary of Shell, but it's got nothing to do with their oil business or drilling business.
No, understood. I just realized what the mix of
Sure.
the power that we're.
So what we have right now and what we've done in the past is we purchase all of our grid power as unbundled resources, which means that we are not told where they come from and they don't come with any green attributes. We do that because we are so small in the grand scheme of the California grid that it's the most cost-effective way to get power. And our renewable mix comes from renewable energy credits that we purchase to offset every kilowatt hour we sell. And so every year we have I think it's a wonderful presentation about here's our power content label. And our content label says 99% unspecified and 1% diesel, pretty much, for anything we have to do at the powerhouse. And then we offset 100% of our sales with these renewable energy credits, which are product category 1. They're connected to the California grid at a renewable resource that we purchase the green attributes on. Does that answer your question on that one?
Yes. So
Okay.
I have another.
Hold on.
There's
There's like at least 2 more questions. Let's get to those first.
PG&E transmission line. So when we built the Out Valley line, and the Out Valley line is everything that goes from the current powerhouse all the way down to Salt Springs Reservoir. The original plan was to only own, for the PUD, the Kirkwood PUD, to only own the portion to the KM Green substation down near Bear River Reservoir. At the time we did that, it was cost prohibitive to get PG&E to take the ownership of the Bear River to Salt Springs line. But we did over the course of several years negotiate a deal with them to own that line and take that 115 kV portion of the system.
Overhead portion.
Overhead, thank you. And that's really important. An overhead portion of the system and own and operate that. Even though the only purpose of that line is to feed our line. So that is the transmission line component of the amortization cost.
So the amortization isn't the physical asset, it's just the ownership. It's the
Yes.
privilege to own. So the amortization schedule is different.
It also includes a 32-year maintenance, that
Right.
they're obligated to maintain it that period of time, and we paid them a one-time fee for doing that.
And there is a map of our line here on the back wall, but more importantly, there's photographs on the back by the restrooms showing why it's important that we let them own that, because it drops down, I don't know how many feet. It's about 1.5 miles long, but it's down the side of a mountain. So if, God forbid, if we own that and it failed, the cost to replace and do the maintenance would be astronomical.
Okay.
So it was a good decision that the board made at the time.
But Rick, we own it. It's just the maintenance that.
No, we sold it.
Sorry, I think, okay, let's make sure we have the right words there. Yeah. So we're out of that game.
Yes.
Yeah, that was.
Moving on to the powerhouse, absolutely, we need the powerhouse, it's a really good idea. We don't use it hardly ever, and we're thrilled about that, but if there's ever a problem with the Out Valley transmission line, if the substation and the step-down transformer that we own and operate goes out, we could be months or years out on getting a replacement for that. Usually months, but during COVID, lead times on things like that were, 2 years. We don't have a backup for that. We're at the end of a line. We're not on any sort of loop system. So this is our backup. This is how we stay in power when there are fires down below, when PG&E has maintenance, when various things happen. Have we looked at other options? Yes, we have looked at other options when we purchased the Mountain Utilities assets, when the powerhouse had caught on fire. We looked at natural gas, we looked at wind turbines, we looked at battery storage. These things to date, and even to date now, have not come to a point where we could implement them with any sort of level of confidence that we would be able to survive up here in the case of a sustained power outage in the winter for a long period of time. We're very, very fortunate to have this backup, community-wide backup, although it does not get used very much.
But I think it's also important not to conflate a transmission line with a local distribution line, because you're asking about the outage last year where the powerhouse can spin and still service the community, but a localized local distribution can be out. But this is talking about a transmission line coming all the way in and all of our power being out versus the powerhouse can sit. So yes, some things can go down here and we can still have us operate. That's a small difference. So you noted that outage.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then the last one was on EV charging. We were also aware and working with Tesla on their several efforts to put in EV charging here. That never came to fruition. We have worked with at least one of the HOAs who's looking at putting in a centralized option. We looked at, does the district have any land to do EV charging ourselves, and determined that we do not have a place that is possible to implement public EV charging. So while we are supportive, it's not a service that we are looking to take on at this time. Certainly something we're happy to work with the community, with any vendors that may come in. And as an aspect of the rate study, something we need to consider, because while we have sufficient capacity on the Out Valley transmission line to support growth here and large services like a Tesla charging station, that's approximately equivalent to a new Chair 6. It's a significant load if we're on the powerhouse generators. So something that we need to consider as how we make sure that we can supply all of our customers in the case of growth in that sort of customer.
And I will just also note, we did a master plan a year and a half ago. And this was an important component of it, identifying where, if a customer of ours wanted to hook into our system, where those spots are most effective. And I think that was identified. So I would say more generally, of what we looked at was a district, what can we literally put up chargers? The answer is no, we do not have the land. We do not own these parking lots. We want to keep the fire bays clear. So we're not going to put chargers right in front of our fire bays for people coming in and out. But what we can do is make sure that we have a rate structure and a, facility and an understanding of our network so that people can do it. Okay. All right. You got another question, Jack? Go ahead.
Would it be possible in the rate study to show the community an option of what our rates would look like if the district eliminated altogether the carbon credit purchasing. Right, so if we just didn't do anything green at all, we just purchased it right off of PG&E's line, what would that cost us as a ratepayer versus if we did the offset?
The answer is no.
1 cent is the answer.
Yeah.
So we're required to buy
Yeah.
the percentages outlined there. It would be a 1 cent savings if we didn't do anything more.
So this is a
than the
California
minimum.
law.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the percentages that Brandy showed in the slide where it was, if you go up one slide, it was.
We're
like-
at 100, she said 52 next year.
So
Yeah,
that's
right.
we're
required.
required by law to get at least this much.
So Bob, the one
So
that
there's nothing,
the
that wouldn't change anything.
Yeah, we're talking, like, I think what Bob's saying is the difference between 50 and 100 is.
Is 1 cent per
cent.
kilowatt hour
Okay.
currently, but we're concerned that if it goes higher, we may want to not have that option.
Right.
That's what we're analyzing.
Okay.
So I agree with the question. But it's more of a future question is if RECs get more expensive, which they're likely to, what's our tolerance for that extra cost? I think that's your question, and that is part of the study.
Okay. Good community questions. Let's wrap up community questions. I don't see any other hands up. Board discussion. I had a couple of thoughts that I've noted, but anyone else want to go first?
I think it was a really nice job on the presentation, and then I really appreciate foreshadowing the change to the usage-based base rates or EDU. I think that probably decreased the potential time of this meeting by several hours. So I think for saying that's going to be fixed,
Yes.
right?
All right, I have a couple of thoughts and questions. Yeah, this is all very helpful. Well done. Getting this together. If I go back into my memory from 5 years ago, I have a number of 6.3 million kilowatt hours in my head as a number of kilowatt hours that we kind of allocated in the same way that you have the 6.8 now. Something like that in my head of like the number of kilowatt hours we needed to sell as the fixed portion of what you're proposing here. I do not remember how that was calculated, and I'm just kind of curious of, you ended up at 6.8 here. I'm just kind of curious. It's not like the median. It's like, is it just like, how are we, and not to say that what we did last time is the right way of doing it. I'm just kind of sure you have 5-year average. How did you end up at 6.8? My first question. You want to answer that first?
So we looked at past history of our sales and what we think is a sustainable number based on historical sales and what appears to be some growth. And then we just chose what appeared to be sustainable number, what we think we can hit. So it's just a budget number.
Right.
That we're trying to base this around because we have to, like I said, we have to start somewhere and know at this many kilowatt hours, if we sell this many,
Sure.
then we generate enough to make our RUS covenants.
Right.
But the 6.3 is an interesting note, so I will have to go back and
Yeah,
confirm.
I could be completely wrong on that, but
I-
I do remember a number that was like that in my head, which I don't know about if you have.
Well, I'll do a search through all our notes and
I don't know.
see if I can find it.
But I'm just kind of curious how that was, not to say that how we done in the past is the way to do it now, but I just want to know, like, what were we doing then 5 years ago to help us inform the same decision now? That's my real question.
For sure. And we keep sales data for many years. So we'll take a look at that and what, if we documented the process in 2021 differently.
Sure. My next question is on, not really a question, it's that if you go to one of our next agenda items and the notes that we have at our, future things is that from 5 years ago, we had said, the board had said, this is a very nuanced thing with RECs, is that we're only buying RECs of what we sell as a department to our customers. So whatever kilowatt hours we sell, not what we're purchasing from Shell or the Cal ISO grid. So there is a losses there, there's a
12%.
12% that we are not fully green. And if you want to consider yourself that, it was a proposal 5 years ago that was shelved to consider what it would be like if we were to not sell buy RECs on the kilowatt hours that we sell, but rather what we purchase. And I would just say that was something that is literally on our document in a page from now.
Mhm.
And I would like to have us evaluate that, I'm not taking a position on
Yeah.
what we would do, but I'd like to know what that number is. Does it go to 2 cents a kilowatt hour or whatever it
1.1
is?
cent, yeah, just
Whatever it is, but I think we should,
Yeah.
as a board, objectively make a decision on that.
Yeah, right.
Okay,
what else?
next was on the property taxes. So if I remember correctly, there was a reason that the board did this. And I'm looking at Bob because I feel like this is something that, like, it was because of rate fluctuations at the end, and you don't want to put it in the variable rate because, oh, if we're short on tier ratios, you might raise the rates emergency to do that. It was to have a little more, give a guaranteed that we're going to cover and we're good. This seems like a deviation from that philosophy.
I'm sorry if it seems that way because it's not intended.
Okay, well,
be.
then.
All right, so if we back up 5 years ago, we were using $450,000 of property tax. And so when we first did the switch over, we used the property tax to try to buffer, it was a subsidy. We at the rate study in 2021, we decided to cut that by 220,000. I remember.
It's down to 180.
Yeah, down to 180,000. And then the board discussion was whether to put that all in the base rate or how to mix it up. And that's when we went from 14.7 cents to 22 cents through that conversation. So we currently have two things we're trying to do. One is, do we continue a partial subsidy of the base rate through property taxes? The second problem we have to deal with is the fact that Russ requires that our revenues be on average 5% more than our costs. And you can't use, you can't pull that from somewhere else, right? You can't pull it out of reserves. It absolutely has to happen, or we violated our contract with them.
Is it rate revenue or can it include prop tax?
Well, that was one of the things that Howard analyzed for us. Property taxes are considered revenue. So the reason why we have that there is so we don't have to put a buffer into our rates to cover the downside. The buffer is using property taxes. The idea behind 6.8 million is there's enough margin in the usage to cover that dollar amount that's if we back up a couple of slides. If we go to the usage rate slide component.
276.
276.
276.9. That's what you're talking about?
Now, if you look at the usage rate components, go one more.
Yeah, there we go.
Right there.
Yeah.
Okay. So 13 cents covers the RECs and our cost of power. 6 cents covers the fixed costs once we get to 6.8 million. And then 4 cents covers the Russ margin at 6.8 million to cover that. So that's the reason why that's there, is we have a way of covering that margin. Once we go above 6.8, then as Brandy said, we're getting 10 cents. But I mean, 100, if you sell an extra 100,000 and you get 10 cents, it's $10,000. And we're not talking big money.
But also, if we were under 6.8, then we'd have to leverage property taxes to cover the tier issues.
And we'd have to cover the fixed costs. We wouldn't have covered all the fixed costs.
Wouldn't cover the fixed costs.
So it's important to be there. Yeah.
Well, that's why I feel like the budgeted 6.8, and that's kind of what going back to my first question. It's an important number.
Yeah.
And it's not something that you kind of just wait. We have to make sure that we feel confident or that we are comfortable not hitting it, and we have a plan to cover it if we don't. And that's our reality. I mean, so I want to be very thoughtful about how we ended the budgeted kilowatt hours. I mean, that's kind of my point. And I guess what I'd say is, or said differently, am I correct in saying that if we did not use the property taxes and the margin here, you could reduce this down to 19 cents a kilowatt hour and use the property taxes? Would that be correct or no?
Where
using the $200,000 that you're suggesting?
it would that's part of the analysis is, do we want to see a 9% increase in the base rate for everybody? Or do we want to still subsidize it with property taxes?
Right.
Like we have been doing?
Noting that we have moved away from using subsidies of property taxes.
That's why there'll be three proposals, zero, a little, or a little bit more. Right.
Okay. All right, thank you. Those are all my questions. Or actually, let me ask a different question. So what's our nameplate of the powerhouse right now, if you say for the 2 megawatts that you want to add?
About 2.1 is in Volvos right now, so we're just about 5 total. And 2.85 is in the cats, so that would stay.
So we'd be up to 4.8 if we added 2 megawatts. So our system peak right now, 3 point something, right?
3.2 or something similar to that. Right now, it's only a concern, only a potential concern. Busy Christmas or New Year's, if they're making snow, everybody's in the valley, the roads are all closed. That's the reality right now and why we're on pretty good footing right now. But as we expect growth, this could become a more of a concern.
One second. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I see another public comment hand up. So if I will reopen public comment if you'd like quickly.
Sure. I mean, it's a basic question.
Sure.
So what would the cost be of increasing it to 4 megawatts?
That's 10 years.
And what would it be?
It's still safe.
Is there another solution where, you're building for max capacity when, disaster situation? If you had a capacity, you kept the current capacity and you put something like a battery storage next door to it with the solar that could generate some capability to balance, is that an option? Not looking at an all or one, but a combination hybrid of solutions.
And we have not developed a cost for this solution.
Let me just say, we think of storage as more of an arbitrage. Charge up, get some cheap stuff at night. So when we need to balance the capacity, but we're looking at, a 1 day, or 4 hour type thing, not a real long term. But, when the powerhouse first went live 15 years ago, storage was unaffordable and we had no out valley. So we started with the powerhouse, added the out valley. And I think as a utility, we want to make sure if somebody wants to ski, there's a way to get them up the mountain. And so the reliability of the power is utmost. In the days when we used to have unreliable generators and mountain utilities, when your chairlift stopped, you looked at all the others to see if they were still running or where they're out of power. So we think the reliability is paramount.
And I think Kirkwood Mountain Resort would agree with you. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Brandy, what do you need from us right now?
I don't know that we need anything right now. Bob, do you have anything that you need? We have a laundry list of things that we're working on. We have a meeting with the rate consultant next week. Our plan is just to continue on with incorporating these comments and questions that we have here. And come back.
Okay. All right. Well, let's wrap up the agenda item. Thank you again, Brandy and team, everyone in the committee. And again, I know we have Trevor and others that have commented today, and Jay, Mark, everyone for the comments. Helen, please, and Bruce, everyone sent comments. There will be more opportunities. March will be a good meeting to come to. I think that'll be a really important one to hear about some of the ways of allocating that base cost out. And we'll continue the conversation, but I think this is a good timeline and we'll do our best to maintain it and keep moving forward. All right, thanks everyone. Brandy, you're still here, so let's go to 9F, performance reporting and aquifer levels.
All right, performance reporting and the losses that we were just talking about, as far as the rec coverage. So this is electric, December, you'll see 24% unidentified system losses. I will note, as we discussed earlier in the meeting, that we have been dealing with some billing, issues. In some of our departments, namely propane and water, we have found and corrected some of those for this month. Electric is not, but it is still of utmost importance to staff to continue looking at these to confirm that the losses that we're having shown here are actual. So on propane. I have a note, I have an asterisk and a actual meter includes adjustments due to billing error corrections for December. So one of the things that we had noted was we were seeing what appeared to be high losses up until the November performance reporting. With December and these corrections, we show a negative 5% loss in propane. And for everyone who's been here, you hear me say this all the time, but for folks who aren't here all the time, we see typically a positive negative swing in propane losses, usually to the tune of positive to negative 2%. And this is to do with the altitude and temperature fluctuations that we see buying propane in the valley, bringing it up to altitude. Looking at this, our numbers look better year to date. We're seeing a 9% year to date, and we're going to continue looking at these. Go forward. Same thing for water. We had billing adjustments included in the December numbers here. We show a 5% loss for December, and 11% year to date. Water. And then lastly, for wastewater, what we show here is unidentified, unmetered usage. So for the wastewater system, we have inflow and infiltration, which is snow melt or other water getting into our collection system that we then treat at the wastewater plant. This is an ongoing project for the operations staff. 36% for the month of December. Is considerable, but not out of the realm of normal for our system. And it is something I would like to note that for the EOP committee, that the community members have asked, the committee members have asked, we are working on prices. How much does this cost us? Because the cost of a kilowatt hour in losses is not the same as a retail cost of a kilowatt hour, but we want to know the numbers to those losses. We want to be able to show what corrections are possible and what those corrections cost, and be able to better focus our limited staff to try to get losses down and in an understandable manner. And I'd be happy to answer any questions on performance reporting if anyone has any.
I see one hand up.
Yeah, just popped it up.
Sorry, this is hopefully a tiny technical question. This 6.8 million kilowatt hours that we were talking about for electricity, the cost of that includes the losses, right? This $945,000 in the budget?
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay. Any other board questions? Okay. Hearing none, we'll close out 9F and let's move on to number 10, major project updates. Thanks, Brandy.
For major projects, really have nothing to add. As you can see, we have the calendar set out to 2031. But really nothing to add unless there's any questions from the board and community.
Okay, I don't see any hands. Board. All right, we'll move on to number 11, general manager's report.
Yeah. Couple things to report. As you know, we talked about putting out the fire assessment ballot, and so we're moving closer to executing that. The mailing date to meet the 45-day public hearing notice requirement pursuant to Proposition 218 is going to be February 17th. The final documents are currently being approved, and next week the engineer is going to be coordinating with the mailing house partner to produce and mail the ballots. The ballots will look like essentially an 8x11 notice, be printed on in colored paper, essentially a folded brochure that you'll receive with information about the assessment. Also included will be a return envelope, and which will be printed on color number 9 envelope. So it'll stand out from the regular mail, and also include a prepaid postage return mark on it as well. The ballot itself will be printed on a colored postcard and will be included in each specific proposed assessment with, I'm sorry, drink some water here. The ballot will be printed on a colored postcard and will include each property's specific proposed assessment amount. So again, this is going to be mailed out before the 17th, and then the next steps will be the ballot will be completed by property owners or an authorized representative indicating the property owner's support or opposition to the proposed annual assessment. For your ballots to be counted, you must clearly mark in the appropriate box, sign in the ballot, seal it in the enclosed envelope, and return it to the secretary of the board, either by mail or hand, and delivered here at the Kirkwood Community Service Building. Completed ballots must be received by 9 a.m. on April 3rd, 2026, and or hand delivered to the secretary of the board on that day. The public hearing will begin at 9 a.m. on April 3rd here at the Community Service Building. The board will receive public testimony, formally accept any hand ballots, and then the ballots will be counted by an impartial third party here in a public place in the morning. The results of the ballots will be tabulated and possibly presented at the scheduled 2 p.m. regular board meeting. However, there is an option for the board to announce a later date at that meeting if more time is needed to tabulate the ballots. And if the ballot tabulation is continued for a different time, the location and the time of that announcement will be obviously will be announced at that meeting as well. So that's essentially the process. I just thought it was important to read through that to share with everybody. Again, ballots will be going out, and they need to come back by April 3rd. So is there any questions about that? Happy to answer.
I do see one hand up.
Okay. I'll bring this back over for everybody as well. Kelly, Keith. You want to start with the people online or in the audience?
Yeah,
Your call.
Good.
So Kelly?
Hey, Rick. So what is the return address going to be on the ballot envelope that is mailed to the address on file?
It's the return address will be obviously here to the district and our PO box, but if you're talking about the address to each property owner, it's going to be the one that's on the count on the.
No, I'm talking about when you're sending the ballot in the mail, right? I know that it's going to the property owner address that's on file, but what I'm wondering, is it going to be from KMPUD? Or is it going to be from the company that is putting the ballots together?
From the KMPUD.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And Kelly, just to clarify, when you said on file with the counties, not with the district.
On file with
Yeah.
the county, I think quite complete.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we were clear, because it's different than the water,
Yes.
wastewater, and Kelly, I want to make sure we're all aligned on that
Yeah,
one,
we've
so.
talked about this before, but
Great.
thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, no, I know that. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
For second homeowners, that is typically not their Kirkwood address, right? Mailing address. if there's any confusion.
All right. What else do you have for the general manager report?
And
Are
then
there other
No,
hands
not.
raised? I couldn't tell because it's off the screen.
Oh, sorry, the hand is not very high in the air. I'm sorry. There it is. Okay. Thanks, Eddie.
So on that, is there going to be a required threshold? As we did with the recent rate increase, does it have to hit a 50% threshold? What's the criteria for it to be valid? And I think to Kelly's question, where we've done elections and various things in other parties, we've asked that the ballots not be sent back to the person that is, could benefit from doing it, but it be sent to an impartial third party. So it's, we've had an issue with that at the community association in the past, where ballots are going back to an association agent that could be influencing the vote. My vote would be it goes to an impartial third party.
And you would be voting correctly. There's an independent entity that's receiving them and counting. Not us.
In a separate PO box, so surely not the PUD's PO box.
Right.
It has to go to the independent.
Is
So,
that true?
no, the ballots will be returned to us.
But sealed and kept sealed.
And kept sealed. We will not open the ballots until
Doesn't sound right.
we're following the 218 process that's been reviewed by council as well.
To answer your other part of the question, it's a
And
weighted,
If they return it in person, it comes here. They're not opened.
Whether it's sent in the mail or in person, it should go to an election or an independent party that collates those and holds them.
we will confirm that we're following state law. I will take that as our action item.
Follow the law.
Yeah.
The right thing to do would be to send it to it.
But we will follow state law. Like full stop. So we will do that. I appreciate the comment. I understand your point, but we will follow state law. To your point on the question on the ballots and how it comes back, it is a weighted ballot. It's weighted by your benefit assessment and your benefit received. For it to pass, it has to be, and I think this is a nuance that we said at the December forum. It is I forget what the terminology Ed used, but it's not, if it was somehow magically, 100 to 100, that means it would be valid. So for it to be, it has to be disapproved and not approved, but it is the majority of the returned ballots is what it comes down to, the weighted return ballots. So if we're putting out $344,000 worth of ballots, whatever number dollars of that benefit that comes back, you look at that number, if more than 50 is positive, then, or said, the other way around, but like 50, basically 50-50, if it's positive, that it passes. Does that answer your question? Do you understand?
Yeah, I understand.
Okay. Excellent.
No other questions.
What else do you have in your general manager's report?
Just a quick update for fire department. This is more for operations update, but just wanted to share that there were a total of 16 calls for the month of January, 13 motor vehicle accidents, 3 EMS related calls, one was a diabetic emergency, a leg fracture, and as well as an ankle injury, 4 alarms, and then 5 landing zone medical evacuation setups, assists for the ski resort, as well as 1 mystery page. And then finally, for manager's report, I should conclude, and we've talked about this before, we're trying to close out the wastewater treatment plant project. And one of the big hurdles of that was renewing our SAM codes, and I'm looking at Terry because it's been literally months of trying to secure the UEI SAM code from the government. We have finally done that, so that will not delay the process. But that that concludes my manager's report, unless there's any questions.
I was hoping, Ricky, could talk a little bit about the billing and the administrative side and the work that you've been doing the last month with staff on all of that and the changes that have been made that I alluded to at the very beginning when we had a public comment on it.
Absolutely. Yeah. myself and staff are committed to do the best possible job that we can. And we do not like sending out erroneous bills or bills that are obviously wrong. So when I first came on in September, there were issues that had happened before my time. Some of those issues were like just changing customer accounts, bringing new customers online, tying that into the billing system. In July, we do a rate increase every year, as you know. Some of those rate increases, because of either our software or the third-party software, didn't include those increases. So we started seeing these things in September, October, November. And since that time, we've been refining our desk manuals or procedures. It isn't, as recently discussed, one, push the button and everything goes out. There are about 13 different steps to get to a point where you can print a bill off. Now there are several more, which are checks and balances, including bringing in additional staff. We brought back a former employee who's done billing, Drew Mateer, some of you may know, who is familiar with our systems as well as our third-party systems to assist in review as well as double-checking accounts. And moving forward, we will recap this week's billing cycle. My goal was to get the bills out on the 2nd. They went out yesterday. And I think the first or second is probably a good goal to have, unless it's, the first and second hit on a holiday. Even though my performance report reflects the 5th, I think I think we can do a better job, and we're doing everything we can to make that happen. And I apologize to the customers for the inconvenience, but happy to take questions if you have issues about your bill, or if you see issues like, hey, for some reason, my fires hasn't been billed for 2 years. If we didn't catch that, please let us know. Let us resolve and fix that issue. And it's happened in the past, but again, we're trying to clean things up and moving forward. I think we're on the right path. And then we're also, as we mentioned during the audit, we're using Ryland, a third-party accounting service to help us review some of the books and some of the journal entries. We're not really going to be using them too much in billing, but it's just another tool that we have to use to help with our finances, as well as free up staff to do more checks. So we hopefully produce a better bill.
And, Rick and I talked about this over the last month of just, there are many steps that the staff have to take. And, at least in my normal job, my job is to automate a lot of those things. And how can we work with staff and help enable them to make their lives easier and have fewer steps that they'd have to take to get the bills out too. But adding the checks and balances is great. And I think those are great things. So thank you to staff, Terry, and your team, and Rick and everyone. Brandy, I know you've jumped in a lot of this stuff too. So thanks for everyone for taking this seriously and addressing it as quickly as we can to make sure that we don't have to send out those emails, because we don't want to.
Yeah.
On that topic, Rick will talk about this, I hope, in comms, but the email that went out could have been better. Essentially it said, due to a third-party error, the original ACH draft, et cetera, I'd be happy to wager with anyone that 80% of our customers have no idea what we're talking about with an ACH draft, and to simply blame the third party, it could have been a better communication.
Understood.
I like to report that it's snowing.
Yeah. It's snowing all day. What are you talking about? This is like you report.
Missed going out.
Did I, on the sequence of agenda, that this was major, this is GM's report.
This
We
is
just
John
finished.
Manager's report. Well, we are in it right now.
Okay. Is operations report, which is 12, did that happen already?
It has not.
Okay.
Is there any other questions for General Manager's report? Otherwise, I'd like to move on to number 12, the operations report.
Just a couple things to mention for operations report, for water systems, both well 2, which have been offline for some time, and well 3, which have had A booster pump issue was recently replaced, so all of our our water wells are currently online. And then the other thing, I'll just see the snow. We're looking forward to some snow. We have our 2 snow removal hires since the last, right before the last meeting. Joe Forrest, as was mentioned earlier, is the new snow removal supervisor, and we have hired 1 additional operator. So we are looking forward to them getting to work in their primary capacity here. They've been doing a great job working on equipment, straightening snow stakes, digging hydrants, doing the rest of the things that you can do when it's sunny. But snow removal really wants to move snow. So we're looking forward to getting them back to work.
The additional operators are rehire as well, so he's familiar with contracts and driveways and really efficient right out of the gate.
Yeah, excellent point. And that's all I have for operations, unless there's questions.
I don't have so much a question, but I know the last board meeting, we had some public comments about like distances to garages. And my understanding is, Rick, that you had gone to East Meadows' HOA and talked to them. I was hoping maybe Brandy and Rick, you could talk a little bit more about the specific kinds of comments that we got, but like, and then generally like how we operate and things like that, and things that maybe you heard at that meeting. And again, thank you for responding to our customers and helping them understand our operations. But I thought it would be good for the benefit of everyone if you could spend a minute on that.
Sure, I can start and we can tag team on this. So the 2 big storms of the year are right during the holidays, at the beginning, right at the end. And as you probably recall, and maybe I spoke about it recently to some of you, the snow came, the timing was right when everybody wanted to come and enjoy the mountain. There's no blackouts and it's during the day. And so it took us some time to get to East Meadows. Because of that, Kirkwood Shuttle felt like they couldn't move to East Meadows, even though there was a report you could drive in there, but the shuttles weren't operating. That generated some concern about our operations and our timing. We heard those concerns from East Meadows. And so we hopefully internally have talked about it and made sure that, you know, moving forward, if there's different ways that we can do our operations, we certainly will. And I also expressed this to each East Meadows HOA saying, hey, you know, we are limited to our equipment, available personnel, but on busy Sundays, it could be a challenge to move around the valleys with big equipment. That's not an excuse. You know, I'm not trying to say that's an excuse, but it's just, you know, we appreciate people being patient, especially on these big days, but more importantly, let us know, you know. And so I've reached out to Vail Resorts, talked to Greg and to Dan Deemer, said, hey, if you feel like you can't drive a shuttle anywhere, let me know so I can get staff over there to address the need, whether it's on Glove Rock or Palisades or KMA. So that's one change that we made. And 2, again, the homeowners that were making complaints were going through the board, through their East Meadows HOA snow removal contract, but we never heard from them until much later in the day. So it was difficult for us to respond to the need when we didn't know about it. So again, I think moving forward, you know, we've definitely talked to a couple different HOAs. This was the East Meadows and Juniper Ridge were really the only 2 chief complaints. We didn't really hear any complaints from KMA. I didn't hear from Larry Parker per se. Palisades, any of the HOA contracts within the commercial area, base camp. But again, the complaints that we heard, we listened to, and we hope to change things a little bit moving forward. And I think the HOA is going to help and work with us, including, you know, I gave them my personal cell phone number. I said, you know, text me, I will get the message out. And offered Brandy's, and Brandy said, yeah, if you need it, I'll give them my number too. So again, better communications, hopefully better operations. We're not going to see this happen again, but it's Kirkwood.
Thank you for that update. Yeah.
Any other,
You want to add?
anything else on?
The additional staff hires will also help with that. We expect to have 2 fully staffed shifts. But agreed, any concerns that can be brought to us, earlier would help us react.
Could you remind what the two fully staffed, like the two shifts are, like one's in the early morning hours and one, I forget.
We typically run an early morning, well, we typically run a day shift, and depending on the storm and the timing of the storm, which we watch carefully and adjust up to the last minute, either starts at 4 a.m. or at 7 a.m. And then we run a night shift that typically starts somewhere between 5 and 7 p.m.
Thank you.
And we just try to be as flexible as possible to hit the storm.
So those are the two shifts, early morning, 4 or 7, and then evening. Got it.
And we also will flex those shifts 10 to 12 hours if we need it. And we do everything we can to prevent operators working over 12 hours. But it has happened, especially recently. So.
Thank you. Anything else for operations? Okay, great. Let's move on to agenda item 13, standing committee reports. We'll start with John, finance, anything?
I think everything was already covered in our agenda.
Okay, Bob, IT.
We didn't meet, or when we did, there's nothing new to report yet.
Okay. Personnel, I will say, is in the board packet. First, want to recognize that we learned that our administrative manager, Terry Leach, is nearing a retirement, giving us retirement in May. And so congratulating her for upcoming retirement. And I will say, you know, we've talked a lot about administrative things today, and Terry's been working tirelessly, and I see her after hours trying to improve the things that we were talking about today. And so I just want to say thank you. And, you know, she's working as hard as she ever has to help leave us in a really great spot as of May 15th. So I really, really appreciate that. I will say that personnel talked a lot about this transition and sees it as an opportunity to rethink how we are best supporting staff in the administrative area. And so we encourage staff to think a little about that, and have had conversations with Ryland to maybe think about how we can balance out the staff that we do have, enable them, empower them, but give them even more checks and balances across the board. So clean audits and easy audits in the future, even hopefully with billing, this all will become easier. So just want to say that is something that we're working towards. And then, you know, Andrew Mateer coming back again helps with that as well. So these are all things that we've been actively working on in the last month. Okay. EOP.
I really don't have anything to add. We're gonna have our next meeting on Wednesday.
Okay.
Did you have anything
Just
to add?
excited to get closer to the I&I and all of the losses on the conversation. I think that, you know, is a great point, and making sure that we understand those really well. That's a good thing. Communications.
We met, and I did a write-up, and the most important work is probably the newsletter just to date. Obviously, we had 218 process in mind with the ballots going out. So the thrust of the newsletter, the main story was be aware of that, check your ballot vote, and get your friends to vote if you care about the future of fire and medical in Kirkwood. But it's not just the top item of the newsletter, the lead item, but also what the board is doing at the bottom of the newsletter that we talk about in committee, and then we've been offering drafts that more or less find their way into the newsletter. So I have a sense that I think the committee has a sense that the newsletter is gradually just getting more and more useful. I hope that's shared, but I'm happy to get comments on that anytime. I had a call this week with the KMR woman who is their comms person in marketing. Carly is her name, and she'll be joining meetings and I hope becoming a committee member going forward. Everything she had to say sounded very promising.
Great. Well, I enjoy the newsletter. Thank you. Thanks for that. Any other questions on student committees? Okay, let's move on to 14, temporary advisory committees. Did you have anything that you wanted to add on?
No.
Okay. And LAFCO, I don't know if I guess that's a standing committee, but that did not meet. General board discussion 15. Okay. Our next regular scheduled meeting is for Friday, March 6th at 2 p.m. My understanding is you will not be here.
I cannot make it.
Cannot make that meeting.
Yeah.
Will everyone else be
In
here?
March,
March,
I will be remote.
so March 6th, you'll be remote.
Yes.
Will you
I'll be here.
will be here?
That should be, yeah.
Okay, because we can't have a meeting if we have.
We'll have a quorum, yeah.
We have to have a quorum. So thank you, Chris, for letting us know. We'll make sure that we're all here. All right, well, then we'll adjourn today's meeting at 4:14 and see you all on March 6th at 2 p.m. Thanks, everyone. I feel like there should be at the end of this. Shall clap.